Soldering is a highly reliable and secure method for making discrete, low-profile wiring and splice connections to RibbonFlex Pro LED tape lighting. Soldering is usually recommended wherever possible, and it is required on RV or marine installations due to the additional vibration and temperature strains placed on connections in these applications. By following the tips in this video, anyone can comfortably solder tape light connections. ArmorCost Lighting recommends a Weller 40-watt soldering iron coupled with a fine point solder tip, model ST7. Use a thin rosin core solder, like 6040 0.032-inch light-duty solder. While some connections may need to be soldered in their final positioning, wherever possible, solder your connections on a flat work surface before installation. Be sure to protect the work area from heat with scrap material or cardboard. To begin, cut your RibbonFlex Pro to length and use blue painter's tape to secure your pieces to the work surface. Start by tinning the copper pads. To do this, simply place the hot tip of the soldering iron to the copper. After a moment to heat up the pad, apply a light, even coat of solder to cover the pad surface. Remove the iron and allow the freshly deposited solder to cool. Repeat the process with the wire ends. Touch the tip of the soldering iron to the ends of the stripped wires and flow on a small amount of solder to cover the copper. Once both ends of the connection have been tinned, reposition the wires to touch the tinned ends together. Take this moment to double check that your polarity is correct. Apply heat from the soldering iron until the solder melts, joining the ends together. No extra solder is required. Again, remove the soldering iron to allow the joint to cool and solidify. Make sure your materials are secured properly and are not allowed to shift during the brief cooling process. Longer lengths of RibbonFlex lighting can be achieved by soldering a section of tape directly to another section in a splice connection to create a splice joint, butt the two ends of your connecting pieces to each other on your work surface. As always, check your polarity to make sure there's a line between the two strips. Tin both sets of copper pads with a small amount of solder, then drag the soldering iron across the two adjacent pads to create a single, continuous mound of solder. Repeat for each circuit to complete the connection. If excess solder inadvertently bridges multiple circuits, this can be corrected by reheating the connection and removing the excess solder with a removal pump or wick. Always test your new connections prior to final installation. Finalize your outdoor connections by sealing the joint with the included weatherproof shrink tubing. Likewise, give your indoor RibbonFlex Pro a more finished appearance by sealing the connections with heat shrink tubing. When done properly, your solder joints will be just as strong and long-lasting as any factory-made connection.